This wedding was an assignment for my Religion 2 class in Catholic school.
This one's wife, Doria, is the help. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As I've explained to you previously, you have a situation whereby this one's wife is a narcissist, as is her mother, Doria Ragland. You might think that this would result in repeated clashes, and undoubtedly there will be friction between the two, which is largely unseen by the public gaze. But there are also instances where two narcissists can coexist for a period of time. This is because they gain a mutual interest from one another. Both will have an emotional output, therefore they can provide one another with fuel. With regard to the position in the fuel matrix, they are both non-intimate secondary sources in one another's fuel matrices. That means that ordinarily they would treat one another by virtue of the shelf dynamic, not having regular sustained interactions, but intermittent ones, where one would take the other off the shelf and they would interact with one another, for instance, for, say, an afternoon, or perhaps going to an event together in the evening. However, there can be some instances whereby the reliance upon that non-intimate secondary source can increase. They're both able to control one another much of the time because this one's wife will essentially offer to Doria a much improved standard of living as a consequence of the money that she has obtained. This is provided both directly and indirectly. It is suggested that this one's wife has stashed money with Doria, and therefore the provision of that money enables this one's wife to assert control over her mother. Furthermore, the fact that she can then go and stay at the Monte Shitshow mansion, that she gets exposure in the press, which she'll also revel in because it enables her to draw fuel, the fact that she gets to go to events that hitherto she would not have been able to attend, but as a consequence of the increased profile of her daughter, it opens doors for her, so it's a residual benefit. Thus, the money and the increased profile and the opportunity to go to events, which are all as a consequence of her relationship to this one's wife, allows control to be asserted over her. She is able to assert control over this one's wife by the provision of assistance. That assistance comes in two main forms. The first is with regard to being a general babysitter and childminder on the basis that you accept that children do indeed exist. The second aspect is with regard to essentially being a partner in crime for the purpose of controlling Harry. These two, as I've explained in parts passim, operate a pincer movement on the hapless Prince of Pink Pancakes, so that they back one another up with regard to allegations of his poor behaviour, with regard to confirming what they each want. Yes, she did tell you about that, Harry, you've just forgotten. And thus he finds himself caught between these two individuals. They will not have sat down and conspired to cause Harry a problem. It's just that both of their narcissisms, if I can describe it as such, recognise the advantage of teaming up for the purposes of controlling Harry. With Doria acting as a lieutenant for her daughter, this gains approval from her daughter, which means that such approval provides Doria with fuel and demonstrates that her daughter is under control. Similarly, by providing help with regard to various matters that this one's wife requires, this demonstrates that Doria is under control. And thus, there is a mutually beneficial relationship between the two. Now, that isn't to say that it is all rainbows and unicorns between them. There will be instances where they will clash. They are narcissists after all. But given the fact that Doria would only have intermittent interaction with this one's wife, the potential for them to keep falling out with one another would end up being considerably reduced. This is why, largely, narcissists maintain non-intimate secondary sources for longer, because of the intermittent interaction with them, and also, where mid-range narcissists, they form part of the facade, so they're rather useful in that respect. So it pays to essentially treat them well. According to Geo News, by the enigmatically named web desk, the headline reads, "This one's wife has turned her mother into a live-in nanny." There have been reports that this one's wife has turned her own mother, Doria Ragland, into a live-in nanny for her children after her past experience with paid staff within the firm. The information has been shared by royal commentator Tom Quinn. Tom Quinn seems to be around like a rash. He's everywhere at the moment. He weighed in on things during one of the most recent interviews with The Mirror. During that conversation, the expert explained the duo's biggest family tradition. Reportedly, this one's wife has always been determined that her children should grow up with a very good relationship with their mother Doria. So, it's no surprise that Doria is the live-in nanny. Now, pausing there, why is it that she's not decided that they should grow up with a very good relationship with their grandfather, Thomas Markle Sr., or with Uncle Thomas or Auntie Samantha? Why hasn't it been determined that they should have a good relationship with grandfather Charles and step-grandmother Camilla? What about Uncle Wills and Aunt Catherine? The reason there is that all of those individuals have been painted black as a consequence of various perceived behaviours they have engaged in. Doria Ragland has, for the most part, remained painted white by this one's wife because she has largely failed to threaten this one's wife's control. She has kept her mouth shut about this one's wife's behaviours. She hasn't courted the press in that regard. The supposed hush money has probably gone a long way to secure that. Furthermore, the suggestion is that she's involved in enabling Harry to get his hands on drugs, which also gives her a favoured status. In addition to that, there is the fact that she provides a residual benefit to the Sussexes by way of child-minding, and given their frequent sojourns elsewhere without the children, assuming they exist, then those services are readily welcomed. Remember as well, notwithstanding the wealth of this one's wife, she always likes to utilise other people's time and other people's money. Therefore, if she can get a child-minding service for free rather than paying staff, she'll do so. Thus, this bunkum about having a good relationship with her mother is purely as a consequence of the fact that Doria is painted white. The article continues, "One of this one's wife's difficulties when she was a working royal living in the UK was her lack of experience of dealing with staff, so in Monty Shit Show, she has kept paid staff to an absolute minimum. If she's avoiding the royal tradition of paying people to do the childcare, she's certainly sticking to the royal tradition of sending children to elite schools," the expert also noted before signing off. Well, you can make of it what you will with regard to the accuracy of what Tom Quinn has to say, but it wouldn't be a surprise for this one's wife to utilise her mother as a live-in nanny, subject to the existence of the children, because that would enable her to assert control over her mother, but it also allows her mother to gain control over this one's wife by virtue of offering this service. It also means that she's going to place greater reliance in her mother than staff, and it enables her, of course, to save money. This might be as a consequence of just being generally tight, or it might be that the pips are being squeezed with regard to the Sussex finances. But it does provide me with a useful opportunity to explain to you the dynamic between two narcissists who are mother and daughter. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.